So new to Medicare business is no longer as attractive as it used to be, whether you're on a Medigap plan or the MA market. You're seeing this from prorated true-up commissions, fewer bonuses on Medigap open enrollment business, carriers becoming significantly more selective about what counties they want to operate in and how they want to operate, and much less aggressive competition to bring in new Medicare members. And that should raise a really important question to us as agents, and that would be, why would a carrier become less interested in new to Medicare business than they are in business that's been on the books for a while? So for years, new to Medicare business was considered, if not the most valuable, at least almost the most valuable enrollment that you could bring on. Actuarially, though, there's started to shift this year, specifically around the year 2023. Let me explain what I'm talking about. So when someone ages into Medicare and then enrolls into an MA plan, they're entering that plan without underwriting, right? At any point. Doesn't matter if you're 65 or 105 or on Medicare disability, there's no underwriting. The problem, though, is when you're aging into Medicare or starting Part B for the first time, the carrier doesn't know your medical adherence or your future claims trajectory or your previous claims history. It's essentially an unknown risk for any plan, Medigap or MA. If we compare that to someone who's already on, let's say, a Medicare Advantage plan in the system today, right? That member does have utilization history. They do have risk scores that have been developed already with patterns with their providers that are established and essentially pretty predictable claims behavior. That member then is far more predictable actuarially than someone who's aging into Medicare or starting Part B for the first time. Predictability is the name of the game in insurance, specifically for Medicare Advantage, that's paid reimbursement or capitated rate based on a history of diagnoses, right? So new to Medicare members then often use more care in that first year on Medicare. And it's not always, but often. The reason is maybe the group plan they were on, or maybe the under 65 market they were on, it was too expensive for them to have a outpatient surgery, so they're waiting to Medicare. So they're catching up on deferred care, or maybe addressing long-standing conditions that they've had and not been able to afford treatment for, or establishing new specialists. As you age, things tend to fall apart more often. In fact, there's a word for this. It's called pent-up demand. And when that happens, the first year cost can be higher than expected for a Medicare beneficiary. So if you combine that with something else that we're experiencing right now, that being margins in Medicare Advantage and Medigap tightening and compressing through the RADV audits and risk scores and star rating downgrades and payment scrutiny and Medigap premiums going up 20, 30, 40% and much slower enrollment growth, carriers have to become more sensitive to risk volatility. So new to Medicare members then represent a higher risk or higher volatility than an underwritten member on a Medigap or someone who's been in the MA scene for a couple years. It's why you are seeing carriers that are adjusting broker compensation for true-ups. You are seeing significantly less aggressive incentives than we've seen for the T65 market. And carriers are becoming way more selective in markets and focusing more on retention rather than pure growth or churning. So it's not that carriers don't want new members, right? It's about a risk balance within the carrier. So think of it like this. A carrier wants predictable members, stable utilization, and strong risk scores that they can be reimbursed on. With that, they can manage margins more effectively than if they are constantly onboarding new unknown risk. So let's talk about where it's going to get more interesting then. So historically, growth has masked this issue on Medicare Advantage. So when enrollment was expanding ultra rapidly, we saw new healthy members entering left and right, and the risk was spread more across all of those lives, because that's the definition of insurance, right? Definition. And volatility became much easier to absorb, but that growth is slowing. Because it's slowing, volatility then becomes more important. So as a carrier, especially in the MA market, they have to shift their focus from this growth-centered mindset to a stability mindset. They have to shift from massive enrollment volume to risk predictability. I mean, Humana accidentally grew more than 1 million MA members this year. So it's a no-brainer that they cut off new contracts, right? It's a no-brainer you got the email about true ups. And this is going to happen with more carriers. It's just a time. It's not about if, it's when, right? So it's a time game of when is this going to happen. And it doesn't mean that carriers don't want T65 members. Absolutely they do. But they want more than that, a balanced growth with a better risk mix that has more predictable populations. That's why you're seeing these subtle shifts in compensation adjustments and bonus structure changes and market participation changes. You think about Medigap carriers. Medigap carriers used to be paying $300, $200 for a Plan G or Plan N open enrollment bonus if you had enough. You're not seeing those numbers as much or at all anymore. And it's not a random decision. Understanding that this is a signal will help you as an agent move beyond simply just enrolling members. So you have to understand how a carrier is thinking about their own risk and stability and long-term sustainability in the market, because the carriers sustaining themselves in the market, whether you want to hear it or not, is as important as agents sustaining themselves in the market, or at least they would consider that, right? So MA is not competing on growth as much right now. They're competing on predictable growth. And I'm telling you guys, that's a very different phase of the market. So it's going to get interesting. I look forward to seeing how the rest of the year plays out, especially with AEP 27 coming in quicker than you may think, right in the middle of a bid season.